Welcome, everyone, to It Tastes Different Gaming Appetizers. Tonight, we're going to talk about the decline of video game sales. Ooh. So, according to the NPD Group, based out of Port Washington, New York, they're basically a research firm that has said that sales has dropped 15% this year over this time last year, down to $4.85 billion from $5.7 billion in the previous year. So basically they're saying that over the period between this time last year and this year, that video games have declined in sales. And that's a combination of a 24% drop in hardware revenue, which went from 677 million down to 515 million. And basically, it's kind of a mixed bag of what they're reporting on, but basically they're saying that video games are on the decline, and we're going to kind of talk about what our thoughts are on why they're saying that sales have declined. Because like I said, it's accessories, hardware, and game sales all kind of looped into one. So they're saying game sales fell 13%, 4.7 billion down to 4.1 billion. Not a huge drop, but it is a drop. And it's a bigger drop this part of the year compared to like January, which I think had a 1% sales drop, in February that had a 2%. Now they're saying that, there's a huge drop. And so it's kind of, a kind of a weird situation that we're in. It's, COVID is over. It's not really over. People are going back into the office. There's less people working remote, and, we're dealing with the fallout in the video game industry from COVID, right? And what I mean by that is there's not as much hardware to go around. There's not as much video games there's not that many games being released. If we're being honest with each other, it's kind of been a sparse year, minus the month of February. I mean, the month of February is probably holding up the entire fiscal year for video games with everything that came out in the month of February. I mean, we're still picking at games that came out in February, as our group. There's so many games that came out in February, and now we've hit this dry spell kind of since February. There's not a whole lot in March that's just been like, woohoo, and not a whole lot in April. April was pretty sparse, and I think May is kind of teaming up to be a little bit sparse, but not as bad as what I would think April was. So, let's kind of talk about that. Shane, what are your thoughts on why that this group is reporting a decline in video game sales, hardware and software?
Because they are declining. There you go. It's really it's a mishmash of various issues. One, the pandemic times still there. I don't give a crap what to say. We're still in there. People got to stay home. People were getting some extra checks from Mr. Uncle Sam. Game sales shot up unbelievable because of that. More people at home, more people playing games, kids staying home, kids playing games, new consoles released, yada, yada, yada. So that was one reason you had such a massive jump. So I didn't do the math to where we were, say, pre-pandemic, 3-4 years, whatever. But these sales were breaking records, the last few years. And, we're slowly coming out of the pandemic phase and entering the endemic, I think that's what they call it. So, people, like Pat said, going back to work, people, they're going outside. It's going to happen. And the biggest thing is the pandemic affected a lot of cycles of development of video games. It slows things down dramatically, trying to work remote in the video games. So that's putting a hurt on it too. The release slate, like Pat said, February, God, we're still picking up the aftermath of February. But April, May, April definitely is thin as crap. May's better, but not a whole lot. So there's plenty of ways to explain it, but it's definitely not a detriment to the gaming community as a whole, in my opinion. It's just because you have amazing year due to, environmental situations and blah blah blah, people are able to get those games out. And remember, a game isn't made in 6 months unless you're Ubisoft and you want to pitch out some trash. A game takes years to develop. So, we're on the back end of games being developed, plus the new consoles people were trying to develop specifically for new consoles, and that kind of hurt development because everybody's working from home trying to figure out new consoles. So there's lots of things that has caused a decline in hardware and game sales. So I'm not surprised at all. It can't all be rainbows and sunshine and unicorns flying at your ass forever. I mean, things go up, things go down. I'm pretty sure, we all follow the games pretty solid. We follow sales. We follow, Microsoft's, doing a great job of making a pretty good comeback because they're doing it right. They're able to get more consoles out. So that's helping their sales. There's all sorts of things that are affecting game sales, but I ain't worried the freaking least. I'm not worried about these sales of games. I'm worried about the quality. That's where I'm worried. So Nick, what about you, bud? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. Like, we were in a pandemic, people were at home. Now that pandemic is starting to end in a way where it's slowing down. Right. It's slowed down significantly, and a lot of people have been vaccinated and various things like that. And a lot of regulations are being relaxed on outside other activities. Right. Besides video games that are outside your house. So, that's just leading, I think, more people to, go and do those other activities, go hiking or go take an airplane ride to someplace, or go to amusement parks and various things like that. And I think that's where game sales are just kind of, I don't know if they're really, are they, like Shane said, I didn't really do the math as what it was before the pandemic, but I would say if anything, we might be just sliding back down to where we were before, right? Or where video games tend to typically kind of rest at. Because exactly during that time, people had to stay at home. All forms of digital media rose. Netflix probably had their best time ever during that, and Zoom and all that crap, but if you think about it now, besides those that are, a lot of companies did go remote, so maybe Zoom's doing okay, but a lot of people are going back into the office. So, that incline that even like a company like Zoom saw, maybe on the decline now, right? Where people are no longer using their service because they don't need to. And so that's just, it's the ebb and flow of the marketplace and just how things work out. I mean, the sales right now are on the decline, but are we sliding back down? The question is really, are we sliding back down to where games typically hover? Game sales typically hover around, or, is it just like how the market is where, it's going to slide now, but then it'll go back up next year or later on this year or something like that. There's ebb and flows, and that's just, I think it's okay to report sales numbers and stuff like that, but to say like, I don't know, the kind of way they put it is like, oh my God, what's happening? And it's like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think it's that big of a problem, right? I mean, they're still making billions and millions of dollars. Sure, it went down, but it's not like it's out. It's not going away anytime soon. So, game sales have been on the rise more and more as the years have gone by. But nowadays, right now, we have other things going on in the world as well, right? We have a war going on, not from us, but elsewhere that everyone's kind of paying attention to. And, we still have Corona and various variants. They are relaxing stuff, but we could see a swing in that. And then there goes the game sales. They're going back up, right? If we go back into lockdown or something. And it's just otherworldly factors and stuff like that. And just life in general, right? These people that came into the market during COVID are going back to their regular lives at this point, I feel like. And, they're just going back to what they did before, right? They gamed a lot during that time because that's all they had, all they could do because they were stuck at home. But now that they're not stuck at home, they're just not buying as many games now. They're going back to their regular lives of whatever they do. But what do you think, Pat?
Yep, that's a really good point. I believe that too. I mean, we'd have it. You know, it's unfortunately that it's part of the corporate world, right? Is the corporate world always expects an increase year after year after year after year, and if you're not increasing, you're not sustainable in their eyes. And so it's always, investors are always nervous when they see that you're not meeting your 9% increase year over year over year. You know, your quota, you're saying, hey, we're going to budget for a 9% increase and we don't hit that. But we did a 3%, or you lost something. And, you know, and I agree with you. I think that if we probably saw pre-pandemic numbers, we would be surprised at how far we've come. Right. I would agree with you 100% because here in the US, especially, they have started basically right around Thanksgiving time, they started laxing a lot of rules and stuff like that. They're like, things are getting better, you know, going out. And this study is saying that video game sales have slipped for the last 5 months, would basically say, okay, sales started to slack in the month of December, which is around the time when everybody started to get a little bit more freedom around here. And they're like, all right, you could start moving around, visiting family, going back out there. I know lots of people who have booked vacations right now and are taking time away and you know, and stuff that they were spending the money on video games. Now they're spending them on activities outdoors, going to do, you know, amusement parks and crap like that. Whereas this time last year, everybody's like, I don't want to get sick. So they're like, we're not going anywhere. You know, numbers are back up. Everybody's wearing masks again, you know, and so it's that. I believe wholeheartedly what you said, that's what it is. But I would like to have seen the pre-COVID numbers. But in the corporate world, they don't care about pre-COVID numbers. They don't care about last year's numbers. They're like, what are you doing for me now? That's how investors and people who look into profit and loss, you know, P&L and all that kind of crap, they're like, what have you done for me now? And what's your increase from this time last year? You know, what's my overhead? What's my operating income? What's my profits? You know, and all that kind of stuff. So that I believe 100% that if we go back to, you know, how the previous year to COVID, how low were we versus how high we've come, and what percentage are we in increase over that? Because the market is going to have to self-correct at some point, and that self-correction is less people are buying crap than the video game related stuff, I should say, than they were this time last year, on the year before that. You know, it's inevitable. Things are going to suffer, and the things that are going to suffer are electronic and digital media. Netflix is posting losses. Amazon's posting losses. Everybody's posting losses, and I don't think it has anything to do with consumer index or anything like that. It's just people are doing stuff that doesn't require them to sit at home on their butt going, I'm bored, let me browse Amazon and buy crap on Amazon, or let me watch Netflix or something like that. They're doing stuff. They're spending their money out at the bars, the club, eating out at restaurants, hanging out with their friends, you know, stuff that we all used to do before COVID. And now life is starting to come back into a little bit more of a normalcy thing. I mean, they still report on COVID and stuff like that. And as Shane says, we're moving from the epidemic into the endemic stage, where it's pretty much, we're going to be living with COVID for the end of time. It's going to eventually be like a very bad version of the flu or something, you know? So it's endemic at this point. We're always going to be with it. We're not going to get rid of it. It's just going to be one of those next big things, you know. It's like remember when SARS COVID was out there? Everybody was afraid of that. People were dying like crazy with SARS COVID. So it is what it is. And I agree with Nick 100%. And thinking of it that way, I believe that the market's self-righting itself of the people, like the hardcore gamers and the gamers are still there. It's just the studios aren't pumping out games as quickly as we're used to because of all the remote working, and the games aren't coming out. And then the people that were not playing video games as heavily before COVID are back to their old habits of playing occasional games. You know, that guy who used to only play Madden and NBA probably picked up a couple other games during COVID to try it out. And now, you know, COVID's over. He's like, I'm getting back to my sports games and going to hang out with my buddies and playing Jock D&D with my My little Jock D&D is my my team management, my fake leagues, and stuff like that. So anybody else got anything they want to say before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, it's a weird article because it wants to make it sound detrimental to the gaming industry, and it's not. It's a natural correction back to the way things were pre-pandemic, basically. I mean, childbirths are down the last 9 months because not everybody's staying at home and boning. I mean, does it mean, children aren't being born? No, it just means people aren't boning and pulling out. So it's not as grave as this article wants it to believe. So,
I mean, yeah, when you look at that, from 5.7 billion down to 4.85 billion this time last year, that's a whole $1 billion. That seems like a massive amount of loss, but I attribute it to all the things that Nick has said, and then the COVID affecting development cycles. Like, we've had a lot less games and a lot less worthwhile games. Let's put it that way.
True. Very true. G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe was before the pandemic.
Right.
Not in my mind.
That was just a bad game.
It was the cause of the pandemic.
Yo, Joe. All right. Anybody else got anything they want to say before we end this one? I mean, we have good news about Microsoft is, selling pretty good and catching up to Sony and stuff like that. But, they're still not beating Sony in number of consoles sold and stuff like that, but they're catching up. But, there's all kinds of reasons for that, right? Xbox is more accessible than PlayStation is at this moment. You could buy Series X's off the shelf any day of the week right now, or S's, not X's. X's are still kind of rare, but S's are a little bit harder, are easier to find. You can walk into pretty much any GameStop or Walmart and get you an S right now if you wanted. So they're a little bit easier to obtain than a PlayStation is. PlayStation's still kind of a rare beast there. So, you guys got anything you want to add before we put this one to bed? All right. Hard to beat that 9% sales increase every year. It's just not going to happen every year. You're going to have a bad year. So, all right, guys, let us know what you think. Do you think this is detrimental to gaming? None of us seem to be worried about it. Hopefully none of the Microsoft, Sony, or any of the big players even care about this. They're like, yeah, we know what's going to happen. It's a self-writing market. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you have another insight or another reason that maybe we missed why you think game sales are slumping? So let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget, as always, make sure you like this video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. You made it to the end of this video. Why not subscribe? And then don't forget to hit that bell for notifications, because it'll let you know every time we put out a new video, which we put out many videos per week. And we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to catch you in the next one.
See ya.